everyone, and welcome. You are listening to the CMDR podcast at the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. This is an interview series with the guests who have presented their latest research on multilingualism, diversities, and linguistic landscapes in South Africa and beyond. And today we are joined by myself, Prof Amiena Peck, Head of Department at the Linguistics Department at UWC, Amy Hiss, a PhD student in the Linguistics Department and also an affiliate of the CMDR. And we are honored to welcome our guest, Gail Cormier, today. So welcome so much, Gail. It's great to see you all the way from Canada.
Mhm.
Great. So thank you so much. Amy, I'll pass it to you.
Yes, thank you again, Gail, for giving us your time to chat with us about your research and just to give our listeners a sense of who you are and your research. So, you are currently an associate professor at the Faculty of Education at St. Boniface University in Manitoba, Canada. You
Yes.
specialize in teaching and researching language literacy and curriculum, and your interests include linguistic landscapes, schoolscapes, language and literacy education, translanguage education in minority settings, and Francophone and French immersion programming. So, yes. So, for the seminar series you presented on data from your PhD research, where you entered 3 high schools in Manitoba province in Canada and looked at native French speakers that form a minority language group in the region of Manitoba. You specifically looked at how students engaged with the linguistic landscape of the schools where they were situated in, and also encouraged them to take image of language in their own communities and bringing it to the classroom and using it as a form of pedagogical tool. You also took images of the schools and asked students to give their own interpretations of the images you took. And with that, you found that students themselves recognized a disparity in the language practices, or that there was incidental learning, and that students also recognized the language diversities in their schools. You aligned the data with theories of translanguaging and concluded that translanguaging, or the use of students' own linguistic resources, can be used as a pedagogical tool in schoolscapes, specifically how students' language resources can be used to stimulate meaningful pedagogical practices and curate a space of belonging within the landscape of the school they occupy. So I know that was a bit of a mouthful.
Yes.
With that said, can you tell us how you got into the line of research that you presented in the seminar series for us?
Yeah, well, so I my master's degree and my PhD are both in education. So I had taken at the master's level a course called Global Sociolinguistics in a Global Context. And in that course, from Professor Sandra Kuritzen, she had presented, and this was in, I think it was like 2007. So it was really, really, linguistic landscapes was really new. And we had read several articles from the book of Jasone Sanos and Dirk Gorder. They had a collection in 2007. I believe it was 2007, maybe it's 2009. I'll have to correct me. That I for sure quote it in my presentation, so I have the reference. But those were some of the required readings. And I remember as a student reading an article about the linguistic landscape in Montreal, Canada. And that was really the first time where, because I did my degree in English, but I'm actually a Francophone speaker, and I'm a minority language speaker. And so it was very rare that I would necessarily see myself in the articles that we were reading. But this one article was about Montreal and how English and French interact. And I was really blown away. And I was looking at what Sanos and Gorder had done, and I thought, oh, wow, like they look at Spain, and they're looking at Spain and the Basque language and how that interacts. And I was just fascinated by this idea of linguistic landscape. And so for that course, my final project was I had done a linguistic landscape study of my hometown and one street in the, I guess we'll call it the French Quarter of the city. And that actually, I won a Young Researcher Prize for that.
Oh, wow.
And I presented at a conference with Rodrigue Landry, who is the one,
Of course, yeah.
the Canadian researcher who is known for giving the title linguistic
Who's
landscape.
Been cited a million times.
I know.
That's such a treat. Oh my word. Oh
yeah.
my word.
And so I think that was in 2009 where I had won that Young Researcher Prize, and they paid for my trip to Montreal to present at the conference. And yes, and afterwards, Rodrigue Landry came to talk to me. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
of
a
course.
big deal. And he said, you know what? That, like, he was in education. He said that project that he had done, linguistic landscape, was a portion of the study. Like, there was a lot more data, but it was just a small thing. And he said, it's so amazing how that has been taken up and turned into like a whole body of research. And so he really encouraged me to continue with that. And he said, I myself hasn't done any work necessarily in that area since that study in 1997. But he said, yeah, I would really like to see other Canadian researchers contributing to that. And so for me, and I know I'm being a little bit long-winded here, so I'm going to try to get to the point, because there was a question
Not at all.
at some point. But yeah, so after that project, that led to those things. And then I thought, you know what, my master's project was on something entirely different. And then I said, you know what, I have an idea for a PhD. And so I applied and I got accepted. And from the beginning, I kind of rearranged my program because I knew I wanted to do something with linguistic landscapes, but the link with linguistic landscapes in schools. And at the time, there was really just Brown's study in 2012 who had linked schoolscapes and with linguistic landscapes. And so from the beginning, when I was designing the study, which was in 2012, I thought, okay, I want to do high schools because I'm originally a high school teacher, and I want to involve the students in the study. So at the time, it was very unique, and nobody had designed that yet that I was aware of. And for that reason, I received funding from the federal government to conduct the PhD research. So that was really fundamental, because I also was pregnant with my son at the time, and that allowed me to do my PhD research full time for a few years. So it was really fantastic. And then I had another baby, so I did PhD all the babies and the PhD at the same time. So
yes, they are definitely PhD babies. We need to be qualified before we can have them.
Exactly.
I have to just pause and say, like, for every linguistic landscape scholar and student and contributor, established researcher, we have all quoted Landry and Boris for 1997.
Yes.
And so for you to have met him, it's almost like a sign that you had to do this in linguistic landscape. So I would love to chat to you more about that, and actually meet him one day. That would be awesome. I think.
Yeah.
And perhaps,
Well, so Canada is extremely large, so that's a problem. But he he works in, I've met him one more time after that at another conference, but he's more so on the retired end now. But he's from, he also, I published a journal article. Really, my first article was in a journal that he organized, which is called Linguistic Minorities. And so there is a whole journal. It publishes in French and in English. And he was really involved with Francophone minorities in Canada. And he lives in a province that is officially bilingual, whereas my province is just English. So there's a lot of links, and yeah, for sure. Like, I think my dream was to be able to have a conference where he would be able to be like in Canada, if we can get the linguistic landscape to Canada, and then he could be the keynote. It would be fantastic.
That would be amazing. We have to speak to the powers that be.
Yes, exactly.
I know the LL conference. It's so exciting, you know, that there's one in Spain this year. Are you going there? Yes, you said you're going, right? Yes.
Yes. The only little thing about that is that my university is potentially going to be on strike. So I plan to be there. I've bought my plane ticket, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with that.
Fingers
I know.
crossed.
I'm like crossing everything.
Yeah. Okay, we've digressed a bit, but it was worth it, I think. Absolutely. And yeah, hopefully one day it will come to Canada, and then we can But Amy, please continue. You can go ahead, and then we'll
okay. So what are you working on now?
Yeah, so you know, how little things, like, it's really nice, your question. I was able to go back in time and see really how this started, but everything actually, when I look back, leads up to what I'm doing right now. In 2017, I started working as a professor at the Faculty of Education. So I was still kind of in my early researching, and I had done a little bit on language and literacy. Just because of the courses I was teaching, I was kind of more in that area. And then during the pandemic, I collaborated with another teacher from Nova Scotia, which is another province in Eastern Canada. And we have the same percentage of Francophone minorities in our provinces, which is a really unique thing. We're 3% only. So it's a very small population. And so what we did is we compared teachers' experience during the pandemic. So teaching online. It was really, we had done this study in 2021 when all the teachers were required to teach online. So that study, we had done interviews online with the teachers because we couldn't go into the schools. We weren't allowed. And so then that project led me to apply for national funding to do schoolscape research in French immersion schools. But I received that funding, which was really great. So what I'm doing right now is I have taken a SASBO's tourist guide technique. It's a methodology that he uses in schoolscapes. And I have adapted that to be able to do it virtually with Zoom. So I have conducted 30 interviews in different schools in my province with teachers or administrative staff. Half of those, about 20 actually, were done online with Zoom. And then I did 10 in person. And then right now I'm comparing the data to see, like, is there a big difference between the online and the in-person, and just what are some of the benefits of using online tools for linguistic landscape research, and then maybe some of the disadvantages as well. So that's where I'm at. I've collected all the data. I have students who are transcribing for me, and that's where I'm going. But I was really happy that I could continue along the lines of schoolscape research, because I haven't done really anything since my PhD thesis was published in 2000. I'm going to say 2016. I think it was that. So
that's a very important date.
Yeah, 2018. Sorry, 2018. No, all right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I also love the question of where are you now and what you're doing now, because I think, I'm sure Amy will understand, and all the PhD candidates are listening to this right now, is that you're so stuck into your PhD that you forget that there's another whole other chapter of your life that's coming up. It's going to be even more amazing. But with your PhD, it's just like, when is this going to get done? And
yes,
perfect. And
it's like, how can't you write yourself?
Yeah, exactly. So we are, Amy's amazing, and we just can't wait until, well, we can wait, we have to wait until the end of the year to submit.
Yeah.
But
I remember those moments for sure. And you don't really, because there's a lot up in the air, and it's competitive, and there's a lot of things that influence that. And sometimes it's just these little moments that lead you in a direction that you kind of just have to jump with these opportunities that arise. So
absolutely. Amy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Let me jump in. So I know you spoke about translanguaging, and also you involved the students, which was excellent. I love that. In your mind, because a lot of our students are being introduced to the definition, to the notion, the concept of translanguaging. Can you give us a very simplified way of explaining it and understanding it?
Yeah, for me, like I just recently got asked this question from the provincial, I'm working with the provincial government as well in education. And a lot of teachers have those same questions, like, is translanguaging, like in my context, they'll say, like, is that saying that students can speak in English? And I say, no, it doesn't mean that we can all, because that in our context, that's the big thing, is that because French is a minority language, we need to focus on it, because otherwise it just disappears. We're already 3% of the population, so there's a lot of assimilation that has taken place. So that's not how I define it. And I also don't define it as code switching, because a lot of people will say, is it just like a fancier version of code switching? And I'll say, no, code switching is traditionally how we see it in linguistics is alternating between languages. So translanguaging is much more than that. Code switching is an element of translanguaging, I would say, but it's even things like that we wouldn't necessarily be able to see on paper, that how the brain uses knowledge from languages to learn other languages. So a big thing is that there's a transfer between languages and strategies. Like if we just even think about like reading strategies, we know that those, if you learn how to read in one language that has the same alphabet, your strategies that you use transfer over. So that would be another example of translanguaging, is how the brain, how languages are connected in the brain. And for me, the big thing in pedagogy with translanguaging is that we want to recognize and uplift all the languages that the students speak. So we want to recognize, so that's a big thing, because just recognizing the fact that the students speak minority languages that are not the language of instruction at school, that is really important to recognize those, and also to find a way to show that it's beneficial to speak more than one language, and languages that are not necessarily the official languages of the country or the location. So for me, translanguaging is much more than code switching.
I totally agree with you. Amy?
Yes, I was going to say it's actually interesting that you mentioned that translanguaging isn't just about the text, because I was going to somewhere in between, but I'm going to
Jump in.
squeeze it in now.
It's a nice segue.
That's okay.
Yeah. Say that when I attended your presentation last year at the linguistic landscape workshop, it inspired one of my data chapters that I was really struggling with. And one of the things that I saw and that I'm hoping to bring out is looking at language as an embodied space within the schoolscape. So things that I'm looking at is multimodality, semiotics, artifacts, images, and paintings, and how this curates a space of learners' own identities. So I just kind of wanted to say thank you for your research, because it has helped me a lot to understand my own research. And so my research was done in the time of COVID, so I wasn't able to engage with students themselves, but I was able to look at the general academic space of the schools and the classrooms, and this kind of led me to language as an embodied space. And the things that you touch on kind of brings that out as well, as how important students' repertoires, their resources are important to curate a space of learning, and that they're not just there to occupy the space.
That's really nicely put. Yes, they're not there just to occupy this space. And I think the space has a real big potential for learning, but also for identity formation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. We are so excited to see that PhD.
I know, me too. I'm interested.
Yeah. But this is also another reason why we have you here, Gail, and why I specifically asked you to come to this, invited you to the series, because, when you go to conferences / workshops, sometimes you see a presentation like, oh my goodness, I just wish more students could have seen this, and more of my colleagues.
Yeah.
And so to everybody listening, that's a real plus, in a way, that we can have somebody come in on Zoom and then be on the YouTube or whatever. We're very multimodal, yeah. It's such multimedia. But I want to switch gears. I know that Amy usually does this part, but I want to do it this time, Amy. Being an academic is a lot on its own. And it's a beautiful space to be in, and it's wonderful to contribute to your field. But another part of our lives, obviously, has to do with things other than academia. So our question to you is, what do you do to relax and to unwind and to be Gail, apart from, work and academia?
I think I have, I when you prepared me to say this, I was like, oh, maybe I should think of things. and it, unfortunately, I was like, what do I do? But I think for me, sometimes one of the issues that I have is that I get very involved in my teaching and in my research, and I have like actual problems, I guess, like letting go and those kinds of things. I'll often tell, because our semester finishes at the end of March, so I often tell my husband, oh, like April's gonna be great, like I'm gonna be able to like breathe in April, and like we'll be able to do things and things like that. And he's like, this mystical April thing, it just never comes. And I was like, oh. So like I think it's really important to take holidays and make sure that you are as disconnected as possible from your work, because I find that when you do take those breaks, like the Aprils, where if you take them and you do nothing related to work, you just experience life, I find that I have much more like ideas and just motivation to continue. And even just for things like changing my courses, like I usually, before I teach another course, I'll go through it again. And if I've had the time to just kind of breathe a bit, then I'm like, okay, yes, I saw this at the conference. I want to put that in there, and I want to do that. So I think that's really important. I also I live in Manitoba, and we have winter for a good 6 months. So it's important to have an activity where you actually can go outside. And I learned how to ski, just cross country ski.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so that's one of the activities that I can do easily, and that that I try to go at night, even once my children are asleep, and things like that, just for myself. I think that's important to have time to do that. I also walk to work, which is a real benefit, but it's about a 30-minute walk. So it's a choice. And that is very beneficial, just like mental health and all of that. Like, I feel like I get time by myself to actually think about things, and I'm walking. So yeah,
that's beautiful.
It's yeah.
You know, when you said, you're waiting for this time to breathe, I totally get that, because I would also tell my husband, like, the next 2 months is high peak. It's high peak. Just like I need to focus. And then after that, I can breathe again. And I mean, we all say this in reality: we don't breathing, we ain't alive, like. So it's really, it's wonderful hearing this from another academic, that we do need that time. And a lot of us, I have to say, in academia, when we say mental health, is, oh, yes, my own wellness. Oh. But actually,
not that conversation again.
Yeah, exactly. And in our department in linguistics, we do put that at the forefront. And Amy knows this very well. My students will just WhatsApp me and we're like, okay, let's go sit on the grass. It's free to breathe on the grass. And then we'll do that. And we do look probably a bit strange, but at the end of the day, I think it also reminds us to be a bit grounded and get away from the deadlines and the emails and the Zoom situation. So thank you for that. Whoever's listening to this, please take some time off, because scientific findings have shown that you're more productive when you relax, you're calm. So
but even
not gonna work.
Even at work, I would take an hour and then just walk around campus, just myself from the office, just to, get a breather. And when I come back, I'm refreshed and ready to work again, and don't feel so overwhelmed and tired and slouchy. So I think walking is good. That's good to anything.
Walking is fantastic.
And so it's like really like what we do naturally. We need to just do more of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's hard to do that. You have to really discipline yourself to be like, okay, I am taking a break right now. Like, I know me, like, I'd rather just finish it and check it off. But you have to ideally take your lunch breaks, take a walk. That's a lovely idea, Amy.
And you said lunch break. I mean, I historically would have lunch when I come home from work. It's actually breakfast, which is terrible. But it's
terrible. Yeah, I know. We all do these things.
Yeah, definitely not sustainable.
Yourself.
And at the end of the day, we have very little to give to the people we love the most. So Amy knows that this is I have an agenda for us all to look after ourselves anywhere we are at any part of the world. Okay, Amy, you've got a very fun thing to end us off with. Can you?
Yes. So unfortunately, it has to be the end game. But somewhere we can continue having conversation. So my question to you is, so it's a bit of an academic trivia. So you're walking down the road of a research and innovation, thinking through your current research problem, and you've reached a bit of a halfway mark, about to solve the problem, but you need help from 3 academic scholars, dead or alive. Who would you bring with you as you continue your walk to solve the problem, and why?
Okay, so I'm going to mention people that I already mentioned in my presentation. I'm going to start with Rodrigue Landry because for me, that's where it all started. He's Canadian. I can't, how can I not? There's that for me, like it's a huge mentor. And because I've met him before, I just feel like there's already a relationship. So I'd for sure consult him. My next one, I have to put a woman in there because I am a woman and I believe that women can do amazing things. Absolutely. So I'm going to put in my PhD evaluator, who is Jasone Sanos from Spain. Oh, I love her. Okay. She is fantastic. I also speak Spanish. And so for me, like that was like a huge link so that we could kind of bond on that area. So I always like to bring those aspects. I don't speak Basque, but I've always wanted to travel to the Basque Country just to explore and see how unique it is over there. So for that reason, I would invite her. And then the last person I'm going to invite is Peter Sasbo, Tomas Peter Sasbo, who is really, for me, like I kind of stole his tourist guide technique, and but you know, in academia, that's all fine. Like you just adapt it, just recite, and all that's good. It's his technique, but I've adapted it. So for sure, I would love. I met him at the other linguistic landscape conference, and he's doing some really interesting things with regards to schoolscapes. So for specific schoolscapes, I would talk to him about that because I think that would be really interesting to see. And also just the Nordic countries, I know very little about that other than the fact that they do incredible things in education. And if you look at results like the PISA or etc., they're always the top countries when it comes to those things. So on the education front, it's really interesting to consult with people from the Nordic countries.
Wow, so she's got a list ready. If she ever needs them, she can call on them. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you, Amy. And thank you to everyone listening. We will continue these conversations. Please give us a follow on CMDR, Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future discussions on really amazing, interesting topics which affect all of our lives related to multilingualism and diversities, and of course, linguistic landscapes. You can also follow me on Instagram at Amiena Inspired or Amy at AmyDala1503. And thank you so much, Gail. We'll see you soon. And let's keep up this amazing research, and we'll chat to everyone soon. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.